Hi, good morning. Welcome, welcome. Come on in here. Come on in here. Hit the share and subscribe button. We're going to be talking about Rick Ross and his urging you to get a trust. I am Marye Dean, Esquire, here at the Wall Street Lawyer.com, coming to you live on blackwallstreet.com because Black wealth is critical to Black power. Also live streaming at the Wall Street Lawyer and Fly Nubian Queen, where Black women have a voice. And I am one of those proud Black women. So shout out to Dr. Boris Watkins for giving me that wonderful opportunity. And drop your B1 in the chat. For one thing we learned from Dr. Boris Watkins is that we put Black people first because we are Black and love begins at home. I can't worry about someone else's house. I can't fix someone else's community until I start with my own. And so love begins at home. So if you're here with me, drop your B1 and let me see your support. Drop your B1 and let me know that you are here. Okay, so let's just get into this. Rick Ross is urging you all, everybody, to get a trust. And this came on the eve of what has been happening to our dear sister Wendy Williams. Oh, wait, let me make sure we're streaming live here. Okay. Can't forget my people on Instagram. You got to do an extra step. You actually have to. Okay, so now we're going live on Instagram too. Welcome to the party, you guys. For those that are just coming in, we got free love in the house. Dropping their B1. Drop your B1. Let me know that you're here. I am Marye Dean, Esquire, coming to you live at the Wall Street Lawyer.com, coming to you live at blackwallstreet.com because Black wealth is critical to Black power. Also live streaming on Fly Nubian Queen, where Black women have a voice. I'm one of those proud Black women. And as you can see, we're all about our B1 because we recognize the importance of putting Black people first. So let's get into what Rick Ross. And
if you don't know the trust,
let's see, we can catch
it. Google it right now. Having a will is one thing. I watched the Wendy Williams documentary, First Name Came to Boss, and I'm challenging all CEOs. You gotta have a trust. You gotta have a trust. And if you don't know what a trust is, I'm challenging everybody to do your homework. Google it right now. Having a will is one thing. A trust is a total different. You can have your will, create your will, have your will and your trust. Not having a trust, allow those banks to play with that money. If they know your paperwork ain't good, man, they'll hold on to that money in that bank, loan that damn money out, make them some interest on it when your paperwork not right. I watched the Wendy Williams documentary, First Name Came to Boss.
Okay, so Rick Ross, you got more people, which I'm shout out to Rick Ross. Shout out to Rick Ross for using his platform to highlight the importance of having a trust. And we're going to say, well, what is a trust? What is a trust? What is a trust exactly? Okay, let me give you the definition of a trust. A trust is also known as a trust fund or a trust account, is a legal arrangement that ensures assets go to specific beneficiaries. The three main players in a trust is the grantor, the person who creates the trust and puts assets in it. Then you have the beneficiary, the person who eventually receives some or all of the assets in the trust. Okay. And you have the trustee, the organization or person who administers the trust. So you got this trifecta, this triangle of people. You have the grantor who creates the trust. You have the beneficiary, the person who will eventually receives some of the assets, if not all of the assets in that trust. And then you also have the trustee, the organization or a person who you appoint to administer the trust assets, to do what it is you're bidding that you want to happen in the trust. So what are some of the benefits? Let's get into some of the benefits of creating a trust. One of the main benefits that you get from putting your assets in a trust is that you avoid probate. You avoid probate. What is probate? That's another thing. What is probate? Probate is the process of transferring your assets upon your death from one generation to the next generation. every time you pass away, you can't look. We all know you can't take it with you. You cannot take your assets with you. You can't take your house with you. You can't take your car with you. You cannot take your bank accounts with you. You cannot take your personal effects, your wedding ring, none of those things can you take with you. Your fine art, your life insurance benefits, your all of your assets, anything that any and everything that you own, your real estate, your land, your businesses, all of those things, when you pass away, they don't go with you. They're just dangling in the universe, right? And so what happens to those assets? Well, if you do not have a will, if you do not have a trust, then they will pass by your state's intestate laws. Intestate meaning that you die, pass away without a will. So your assets will pass along according to the law. Now, but it has to go through a probate process for that to happen. If you have a will and you leave those assets in your will will have to go through that probate process, which is the court intervening to make sure these assets actually pass from one generation to the next. If you have a will, if you do not have, you die without a will, then you have to go by your state's intestate laws, what the laws say. If you do have a will, then what you want to achieve by virtue of your will, what you leave in your will, your wishes in the will, that is what the court will use when they are probating that will. You probate a will. And so they will make sure that those assets transfer from you to your heirs. It may not be a generation. You may not have children. If you don't have children, then it'll go by your intestate laws, whether it's, sometimes they'll say to your siblings, then if your siblings are not, then to your parents. And so and the order of intestacy laws will vary from state to state. Okay. Whew, take a breath. Let me see who in here with me today. Drop a B1 in the chat if you're here. We just went over, Rick Ross urged the importance of having a trust. We are talking about some of the benefits of having the trust. And one of the first benefits that we are acknowledging is that those items will pass to your heirs. They pass to your heirs according to the terms of that trust. So if you do have a trust, then you don't have to go by the intestate law. So that's what we're talking. So the first thing, that if you have a trust, one of the first benefits of having a trust is that your estate will avoid probate. All of your assets will avoid that court having to come in and say, this is how your assets will pass to the next generation. This is where your money will go. You will typically name a trustee. And also, how does this relate to the Wendy Williams situation, which has made this conversation so important? Well, she had a power of attorney, right? You say you need not just a trust, but you need a full estate plan that includes healthcare directives, power of attorneys, named guardians if you have children under the age of 18, or if there's a person that may become incapacitated, you want to already have a guardian named. And so, that's how Wendy Williams, if she would have had a trust set up, she would have had another layer of protection, because she did have a power of attorney, which I would love, love, love for anything to get those court records unsealed and understand the court's reasoning for setting aside the power of attorney that she had. I'd like to see it on paper. I'd like to read it and understand the law and the justification and the arguments that they put forth. Whew. But I digress. If your trust will cover in the event that you become incapacitated or the event that you pass away, what will happen to your assets? How will your assets be distributed? What will happen to you? What are your plans for your ongoing? And so if you set up a trust, which I do a trust, and we also do a living will and a pour over will, because once you set up the trust, that's one step. But you also have to make sure you transfer all of your assets into that trust. And so the purpose of we do a pour over will to try to capture assets that aren't, because you set up your trust, and the trust is a living document that is living and breathing and will change as you grow and change, just as your business needs to keep its paperwork updated, because you're constantly living and growing and changing, needing new contracts, needing new this, so forth and so forth. So as you acquire more assets, you may need to go back and update that trust document. And if you forget to do that and you end up passing away, or you just have sudden death before you got the chance to transfer those assets, you also do a pour over will in that estate plan to try to capture some of those capture those assets and make sure they transfer according to the will, the wishes that you've outlined in your trust document. So avoiding probate, avoiding that court process altogether is one of the main reasons why you set up a trust. Another reason why you do is because you have estate tax minimization. You can minimize the taxes on your estate. So you know our government taxes every single thing we do. You did you breathe? Tax it, tax it, tax it. Hashtag this is America. So you know that's kind of how it is. So there is a tax that every estate has to pay. It's called an estate tax, that when you pass away and you are transferring assets from one generation to the other, it's a tax on that called an estate tax. And so you can minimize your estate tax. Depending on your estate's value, a living trust can potentially reduce the estate taxes due upon your death, okay? Another thing is that you keep your financial matters private. You keep your what's going on in this. I know when I was coming up, my daddy used to say, what goes on in this house stays in this house. Okay, Daddy, I'm glad it ain't nothing bad going on, because sounds a little suspect, but I digress. Let's see. Okay. So another reason, wait a minute. I come back over here and I see Cocoa Butter Queen in the house, and shout out to Cocoa Butter Queen, but she says most Blacks cannot afford certain things. Let me tell you something. If you haven't learned anything from me by now, the wallstreetlawyer.com, is that what we do have, and I almost came in here and really talked about that this morning, but sometimes I say, let me not get off my soapbox, and let me just, give you some hard facts that you need. Let me just talk about, the law, the trust, and this, that, the other. But you always bring me back to this, because one thing that we do have as melanated people is that we have magic. We have soul power. We literally have soul power. There's power in magic and melanin. And so the reason why they were able to control us by making us by taking away the way that we have come to know God and worship God through nature, and give us back that watered down version. But let me tell you, if so a man thinketh, so is he. So if you think that most Blacks cannot afford certain things, then you cannot. You cannot. And that's why, and let me tell you this, and for those of you who cannot, and you're stuck in that mind frame of the loop that you cannot, because we have the ability to open up the heavens and get whatever it is that we need. But if that's where you are, then I even created blackwallstreet.com, where I have DIY contracts and resources on there that you can literally download and book a consultation with me and fill in the blanks. And so there's so many, and not just myself, there are so many resources, so many of us out there helping each other out, that I'm just not going to even ignore. I'm just going to pray that you watch The Secret, about the law of attraction, and understand and learn and understand your ability to speak life. And I'm just going to pray that you speak life, Cocoa Butter Queen. Greetings. Okay. Shout out to Chio Vietti. I know I'm butchering it, but shout out to you. We got Motivation Namaste, watching all the way from Europe, which is why you gotta love the internet. Some people say they hate the internet and it keeps us disconnected because we're always down into our phone. But then on the flip side of that is, wow, I am now connecting with a sister all the way in Europe. So shout out to that. Free love, hashtag B1. Drop your B1 in the chat and let me know that you're here. We are talking about Rick Ross and his importance of getting a trust, and I'm gonna run that back again. And then I explained what a trust was, and now I was going through some of the benefits of a trust. But let's get into this for those.
Documentary, First Thing Came to Boss. I watched the Wendy Williams documentary, First Thing Came to Boss, and I'm challenging all CEOs. You gotta have a trust. You gotta have a trust. And if you don't know what a trust is, I'm challenging everybody to do your homework. Google it right now. Having a will is one thing. A trust is a total different. You can have your will, create your will, have your will and your trust. Not having a trust, allow those banks to play with that money. If they know your paperwork ain't good, man, they'll hold on to that money in that bank, loan that damn money out, make them some interest on it when your paperwork not right. Biggest boss, Ricky Rose on the check.
So Rick Ross said it. Y'all love y'all celebrities, and so I guess when you hear from Rick Ross, well, shout out to Rick Ross for dropping that nugget and using his platform to bring the importance of having a trust. And so I explained the legal definition of what a trust was. We got Noy or number one in the house, dropping a B1. I explained to you what a trust was from a highbrow definition, but let me give you another way to what is a trust, the way it was taught to me by my mentor, Allie Katz. A trust, think of it like a wagon, okay? A wagon. And you want to protect certain things and take these things with you. Right, but you don't, because you don't want it for you to have it, because if you get sued or which, depending on what type of trust you have, there's certain trusts that protect from that and certain trusts that don't. So make sure you talk to an attorney about setting up your trust. But so you have this wagon, right, and you have you want to put stuff in it. I'm going to put a teddy bear in it. I'm going to put this mug in the wagon. Shout out to the Dean Law Firm. I want to put a mug in the wagon. I'm going to put my phone in the wagon. And so the trust would be the wagon. The trust would be the wagon. The grantor is the person who is setting up the trust, the person who is putting the assets into the wagon. A beneficiary, a person who you're putting the assets into the wagon for, a person who will later receive the phone that I put into the wagon, a person who will later receive the mug that I put into the wagon. That is called the beneficiary. And then you have your trustee, the person who you point and say, your job is to follow the terms of my trust and do this according to the way that I want you to do it. That is what you call a trustee. Okay. And so those are the three major players when you're setting up a trust document. Make sure you understand that. And you want to make sure that because setting up a trust is one thing. It's one of the misconceptions of starting a trust. People put your assets in your trust and think that they're done, one and done. And you're really not. That's only the beginning. Because once you set up that trust and you have that trust document, you have to now make sure you have the paperwork completed and complete the process that actually puts the cup in the wagon, that actually puts the phone in the wagon. So now I don't own this cup anymore. The cup is now in the trust, and I may control the trust. I may control the trust. I may have named myself as trustee, right? The trustee is the contract to the person who you said, this is how I want you to administer my trust. Okay. You put the phone in the trust, right? But the phone will eventually go to the beneficiary, and the trustee is the person who is administering the trust. Okay. So and then we get into some of the benefits of a trust. The main benefit is that your estate, the assets in your estate, will avoid the probate process. We've got into that. Probate meaning the legal process of transferring your assets from one generation to the next. Estate tax minimization is another benefit of setting up a trust. You keep your financial matters private because it is nobody's business what's in your personal contract between the grantor and the trustee. And because your assets and that business stays out of the probate court. Once it goes into the probate court, it is public record unless they do what they did in the Wendy Williams case, seal those documents. Privacy, asset protection. Trust can protect assets from creditors, lawsuits, or divorce proceedings. By transferring assets to a trust, you can shield them from all of those kind of things that could happen. Certain type, and it's a certain type of trust. It has to be an irrevocable trust to protect you. They can shield your assets from creditors and things like that. Irrevocable meaning you can't go back and take those, you can't control, you can't take those assets out of the trust. It's irrevocable. A revocable trust allows you to have some kind of control during your lifetime, take assets in and out of the trust as you so choose. Okay. No conservatorship, because you already named a conservator that will take power should you become incapacitated. Trust keep your family from having to use a conservatorship, or keeps the court from having to use a conservatorship if you become incapacitated or unable to control your faculties. Okay. And you also want to, it's a good way to protect minor children, which is another thing that I always advise you to do, is name guardians. A lot of people don't understand that they don't have named guardians for their children who are under the age of 18. So if something happens to you, if something happens to your spouse, if something happens to both parents of those children, then, and you don't have a named guardian, then the court will have to appoint a guardian, a conservatorship, and deal with those children. And so you want to name a guardian. You want, we call it in our community having a godparent, but you want to have a legal godparent who would take custody and possession and access of your children should you become incapacitated or should you pass away. So that's what your name, we need to take it a step farther in our community. We know them as godparents. This is the godparent of my child. You name a godmother of your child, but you should take that a step further and actually have a legal document that is a named guardian that you put in place that will cover your children who are under the age of 18 should something happen to you. You need a power of attorney, you need healthcare directives, you need pour-over wills, and you need living wills. And if you are looking to get those, if you want to have more information, if you want to get more information, talk to me one-on-one. You can schedule with me a consultation. I have the link in the chat. You can schedule a consultation. Marye Dean Esquire here at thewallstreetlawyer.com, coming to you live on blackwallstreet.com, because Black wealth is critical to Black power. Coming to you live on Fly Nubian Queen, where Black women have a voice. And let's see who in here. We got Nubian Queen, hello, watching from Angola. Shout out. Hello, everyone. Well, hello to you too. Thank you for joining us here today. We got trust fund, very important. Okay, and thank you. I'm hoping you post this to YouTube. This is some real good content and information. Thank you for joining me here. I'm glad that you appreciate it. It's always good to be appreciated. And with that being said, I'm gonna get out of here. Marye Dean Esquire here at thewallstreetlawyer.com.